The Fantastic Four suck, right? They suck, full stop.
Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and today I'm doing a video. Well, I was forced to do this video. I had no plans. I'd already made my statement. If you hadn't, I know you hadn't seen this video that I did trying to sell you on the Fantastic Four, right? Tried to sell you guys on it, right? But in recent times, what happened here? Sorry, they got this Black Panther shirt on. While Secret Invasion was ending, they asked the actors and the director, what would you want to shapeshift into, right? So you look at it, if it's about that, why do they lead with the Fantastic Four sucks? Why would Ben Mendelsohn say this, right? So, all my hard work defeated in one thing, because I guess it's died out, but I still have to talk about it because we're going to listen to what he says. And then I don't know, I guess we'll go into the origin of Dr. Doom because that's what he kind of half remembers. So let's listen to it, and I will try not to get too upset.
Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom is the greatest single character in the entire MCU, bar none. He's the first character to ever have a substantive backstory that we could understand and that gives context both in the old traditional Cold War minor state kind of idea and also as someone who really got disfigured, got his family taken from him, and then takes all that, takes his skill, has the wounds, has to wear the mask and continues on to do what he did. The Fantastic Four suck, right? They suck, full stop. They're sort of like Marvel's first attempt to make a group, and they suck, right? That's why the X-Men rule and Fantastic Four suck. However, the Fantastic Four birthed the Skrulls and they birthed Dr. Doom. So while they suck, they also gave rise to the greatest two villain groups and single villain ever. Now, you can kick anyone else. Give me Dr. Doom against anyone because Victor suffers and you will now suffer. You know, that's why it's a no-brainer. Give me Victor Von Doom. Give me the success from that lame-ass group of like, flame on!
There you go. That's how the wrapped it up. What else? What can I say? They just totally trashed the foundation. What is the LL Cool J has a line? How do the four walls hate on the foundation? And that's what comic book fans, some pros that wrote the book, one being this is Steve Englehart. He didn't want to use he thought Reed and Sue were boring because they were married, and so what can I say? Well, it's not going to end there. I'm not going to admit defeat, But I just wanted to if you hadn't seen, we did these paintings here in Alex Ross. And there we go. We got them right there. And to show you,
Hey everybody, this is Petey from
here's me a lot.
and today I'm going to talk to you.
That's enough of me. That's me. A little more color in my beard. And me selling you on the FF. So I'm just going to hold it right here in this little mock-up that I did, which is behind me also. Because Earl Norem, even though he didn't try to completely translate what Byrne was doing with the thing, it's close enough. It looks like the Kirby thing. It's still, it was images that were done for kids, so there's a little more lightness to the thing, less thing. But the Fantastic Four costumes really look snazzy here. So I was kind of like, and I was happy. I think who's that? Byrne had kind of went back to the original outfits, which had this kind of wider collars, and I think that works a lot for these things. And that's one of the things I was saying as far as doing a movie. Let's not do what happened in Doctor Strange, where they added a lot of bells and whistles to the FF costumes. Make them simple, sleek, and I think I showed you. I think in here I showed you. Did I show you Byrne did something else? Oh yeah. I showed you Byrne having them in Explorer outfits. So it had the FF outfit. He actually negated them. He made them, have more black in the costume and have white collars. So, and then he gave these safari sort of vests. So it added another element to it. So there's other things you can do instead of doing the standard superhero. And that's one of the things you have to remember when Stan and Jack did the character. Stan didn't even want them to have costumes. And that's the difference when people compare them to the challenges of the unknown. Initially, they didn't have costumes, and he sort of gave them uniforms. When he first did them, they were, they had wider collars. There's a little more pop to it. And then as the monthly grind goes, it became pretty much more of a jumpsuit. So that's as much as I'm going to go into the video. Because it also, I talk about that you don't like the Fantastic Four. There's the Incredibles that borrows heavily from them. They just kind of mix things up. Mr. Incredible is more like the Thing, even though his name is similar to the way Mr. Fantastic works. And then the Elastigirl is a smart one, the brains of the outfit. And and what else? Because there was already Elongated Man and stuff like that. Dash is the hothead, and the completely stealing from the FF is Dot. Was it Dot? Who goes invisible and has force fields. Now I don't think anywhere there's Invisible Man, but the Invisible Man doesn't do invisible force fields. That was something to make Sue a little more dynamic, but still sort of not as far as kind of aggressive like the guys type of deal. So you had two successful movies that Disney did, especially when they owned the Fantastic Four. Then they could do another one because it was a parody of the Fantastic Four, right? But it was very successful. They even had a kid who had powers that you don't know what they are, right? So with that said, we had what else? What else do we have? We have 4 movies, right? We have 4 FF movies, 2 that were like nothing to write home about, and 2 failures, right? But in all 4 of those movies, Doctor Doom is in all of them. So with the FF always getting the negative, Doom is in all of those movies. So if they're bad, he has to be bad. But we know he's not bad, and we know the FF isn't bad. So I just want to say hogwash to it. Instead of just admitting defeat, I'm just going to say it's nonsense. Don't buy into it. So to land on a happy note, let's see. What can I do? I want to go into, well, since I'm not going to totally trash Ben, I'm just going to do a quick thing on the origin of Doctor Doom, right? You might as well do that because there's a little bit of tidbits that, didn't I do the origin of Doctor Doom? I think I might have. So we're going to do the condensed version of it that was done in the 80s because I think it's Roy Thomas and Larry Lieber. They did the origin of Doom, taking a bunch of, it was almost like a clip sort of thing where they took a bunch of stories that was told Doom's origin and they put it all into one story and they wrapped it around Doom's girlfriend, right? So we're gonna to do this. Ben's favorite thing Ben Mendelsohn's favorite character. Let's go into it, right? So at this point, Dr. Doom is thought to be dead, right? So as we go through this is Doom, and we saw Byrne putting Doom in a new outfit. So we're like, what the hell is he doing? How can we put Doom into a new outfit? That's totally wrong. Can't do it. How can we do this? But at this point, I think I stopped reading the FF, the issue before this. I stopped reading the X-Men. Those are my two favorites. And I was hanging on to the Alpha Flight. I think mainly because Aurora was in there. But I didn't buy this issue. I bought this later. I think around the time Man of Steel came out, and I was pleasantly surprised I was wrong to have left comic books, right? I'm still buying back issues, so I don't know if you can consider it totally leaving. And I was buying Alpha Flight, as I said, and then later the Hulk. So I was half in, half out, right? I think I had this issue. I didn't have this. I had issue before this, 277, 286, 290, and 293. Those are the issues that I had. So it gives you an idea that I wasn't with X-Men. I would bought, what was it? I can't remember the last one. It was like, I think when Storm loses her powers, 180. It's 185. Then I had 191 and 92 and 93. And then I had 190, was it 199, 200, and 201, and then there's a break to like 207 or 206. And then once, I think 207, I think I started buying again at 207 around that. So FF, I stayed after Byrne left for a couple issues and then I bolted, right? So we have this story, True Lies, right? Jerry Ordway's doing the inks, he did the cover, and it said the time has come, right? So Kristoff, who has been, banished from hanging out with Dr. Doom, has been brought in by one of the robots, right? And he doesn't know that it's a robot, and he finds out that the robots have a contingency plan. They've lost Doom, has specific orders, and they've interpreted his orders the wrong way, right? So one of the things that I think Byrne was going to do was, when he came back, he would be horrified about what his robots had done. So if this, Kristoff was taken out, and in the letter page, they'd already said that this was Doom's illegitimate son. They weren't playing around with this, right? They were just saying this was Doom's illegitimate son, right? If you read the letter pages were actually in between the editor and Byrne, so a lot of those comments by the editorial could have been burned. So you can get a lot of tidbits from the letter pages. So when they reprint stuff, it's always good that they keep the letter pages. But I think a lot of scans, if you do any of those things, search online, they kind of get rid of the letter pages, right? So they hooked the Kristoff up, and look, what's the name? Jerry Ordway adds a nice quality to one of Burns' kids, right? So we have Doom with his girlfriend, and his father's in trouble, so they got to get out of town. And he takes Doom out of town. He said he needs him to survive for his destiny, but Doom is severely hurt. So he does have what the people were saying, this tortured soul and this history, this rich history. Now, I think it was in the annual. I already said that. That's what I talked about it in the annual, where they kind of showed Doom's history, and then they did it in a Marvel Superheroes, where they also did his origin, but they had his girlfriend be front and center, and it would be showing you how Doom has, something is lost in him. Is this sort of dark soul, right? So his father is near death. Doom has survived. His face was established in that annual, right? So it's not like Byrne was doing anything out of the ordinary. And basically, the story plays out the same way it does when Stanley and Jack Kirby did it, right? And the father says something. He said, "You must protect," and he's like, protect. They feel like it's protect him from Doom himself, right? So he goes through and he finds his mother's stuff, right? Cynthia Von Doom, and it's like practicing sorcery. And this is what his father was doing, was he being a healer, and he had to leave town because he didn't save, I think, the king's wife. It's basically like a third world country for gypsies, and he finds all of her stuff, that she was a witch, and he's going to start practicing. And he said they've come to fear him. So he's checking this, doing this stuff. He's learning to become more powerful. And then his girlfriend, who was at his side earlier, she feels he's lost. He doesn't. He's like totally confident. You see him even more confident than when he was younger. Travels to the U.S. because he was in the original story. He was asked to come to the U.S. to study. Runs into Reed Richards. Reed Richards sees something wrong with his calculations, and Doom can't accept this. Now, this is established that early on, that his ego and hubris would lead to his destruction. So this is the key to Doom, right? So you can't escape this. A lot of people, because he's Doom and he's so great, you want to kind of make him even better than he is, but there's a fail-safe to a Doom story as a villain where, there's a bit that he can't see because of his ego, right? So he kicks out Reed, and he's about to contact the Netherworld. Now, I got into an argument with a guy online. He was saying, hey, he was just trying to talk to his mother. Like, you don't practice with this stuff, and it's illegal. He wasn't supposed to do these experiments. Oh, he's just making a phone call to his mother. Look at that explosion. Who could it have killed, right? So I think this is the other thing. This portion of the origin, I haven't seen Roger Corman one, but it would be interesting if they kind of did it full on like this, right? We had the true backstory, and he's covered now. The point that Byrne added was that we see the scar, right? Now, Stanley and Jack Kirby showed that Dr. Doom was hideous, right? They already showed that he was hideous. So how can Byrne do this, right? But Jack Kirby was going around saying, after he left the FF, he drew a picture, and he drew Dr. Doom with a really small scar. And he said, hey, Doom, and he worked it into it. Doom's character, Doom's ego, this scar, take his flawless face, and he would decide to never show anyone, right? So Byrne decided, hey, let's have it be a small star. And at the same time, he wouldn't accept it. This ego would not accept this, right? So he's following what the king said, right? So he tried to make it both, right? So let's keep this in mind, because Byrne, at the same time, he had an idea of what happened to Doom's face. And it was the way he described it was very interesting, of like being connected to him, this explosion of the netherworld, where when you took up the mask and you saw it, it was like, oh my goodness. And I think in a cartoon they did that too, where you take up the mask and someone sees it and she's like horrified, right? So kind of giving some wiggle room here to the story. So Doom goes, finds these monks, they kind of teach him, they finish off his teachings, so sort of his college, and he gets his armor, and as he puts it on, he doesn't worry about the arm, him being in any kind of pain. And then they make the mask, and this is where a lot of people ran away from the origin, saying Byrne went too far. The mask is still hot, puts it on his face, and it burns him. And this is where we get to see what happens to Doom. Why, when we look at his eyes, you see his face is a total mess, right? And they say, and he said, no one else will see this, and he becomes Dr. Doom that we saw in FF number 5, right? And they have an editorial note of that too, right? So I guess I should go back and show some things, right? They go through a little bit of history, and Kristoff is getting the information, and he gets up to seeing the Baxter building being taken out and flown into space, and he says, stop. And he has enough information. Now, this shows you the power of Dr. Doom, that they put the memories of Doom into Kristoff, and Doom's persona comes alive in him, right? There's no gray area. Doom has from just having the memories of Doom. I think at the same time, maybe some months earlier, they had a clone of Hitler, and Hitler was experiencing all the stuff, and that he, like videos of what he had done, and they put him as in the Batman and the Outsiders. They gave Hitler a gun, and they had a Jewish person next to him. And in the Batman and the Outsider story, Hitler shoots himself. So it shows you that he never really saw that stuff. He was detached from it, but having to see it, this villain would see himself as a villain and take his own life, right? Because he's seeing how bad he was. Here, Doom's memories are so powerful, he takes it back. So we have this shot in New York. Byrne was using high contrast photos, and he was putting it into the book. This is like similar, not exactly similar, because these worked a lot better than Kirby's collages, but it kind of had that. And at the same time, they go to here and they see someone putting these terrible things on, putting the N-word lover on this racial equality thing, right? And they run into the person. This person is doing this thing about hate. The Torch sees it, and he gets so upset, and he burns all of them down. But we hint who's going to be the next villain coming up. And when I saw these Psycho Man stories in Hate Monger, I was just blown away. So I was really felt I was wrong to not read the FF, right? So all the stuff, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened in the issue before this. And Franklin is normal. He doesn't have any powers anymore. But now they know that the powers are still there. They can be unleashed when he has his bad dreams, right? But ultimately, right now, Franklin's power is to see the future. And Byrne's plan was to keep Franklin at that sort of power level. Just he can see the future, right? And at the same time, the Blackstone building becoming less the FF's home. But you see, the She-Hulk and why they're getting their relationship going on, right? And at the same time, a brick goes into the building, and this is what happened. I think in FF number 6, and Byrne gets to play out what happened in FF number 6 again, but to do it to like you see a nice look at this. He got comic book art over here with high contrast photo like merged together very nicely, and then we have Johnny here with some high contrast buildings. Now, Jerry Ordway said in looking at that stuff, he kind of brought some of that sort of texture to his art. But at the same time, he was saying, working with Byrne would do a lot of different textures. So he said Byrne had a lot of textures for all of his stuff. So he said most people had the same textures for the wood to rock to glass, and he said Byrne had a lot of different that. But he also said this high contrast stuff, seeing that, working that into the work, sometimes he would do his own and it would look like the photo. So Johnny sees this and he realizes something's happening again, but they know Doom is dead, right? And Johnny's trying to make it, but he can't. He's gonna start falling. But Reed is there, because we need him in the story. We can't escape that, right? And they realize it's Dr. Doom. They say, oh, you changed your armor. And Reed is not buying into it, and they think they're going to have a talk off. Doom is like, nope. It's over, right? Bang. So at this point, oh man, we also had a good point here to look at something else. Spoiling you Doom fans. Right, so here we go, the origin of Dr. Doom, right? So we saw Byrne's version, right? We see him as a kid, his father's trying to heal the wife, right? And he gets in trouble. She's dead, and he said the gypsy failed him, so he wants, what's the name, Doom dead, so that's why they had to run out, right? I explained all this. Right, so we're seeing it's pretty much the same, and at the same time, he says that we must protect. He said, people believe he's going to protect us from Doom himself, right? And as he's going through this, he's actually finds his mother's stuff, right? So he's like, well, she's a witch. He learns her secrets. So he starts going around town, and he starts, utilizing and doing tricks, and he's messing with the king, right? He's messing with the king, and then they come to kill him, and then he's doing all these things that he has. But then at the same time, someone comes, and brings him to America, right? He agrees, wants him to read, right? He tries to help him out. No, he actually doesn't room with him. It's a little longer. Burns condensed it, right? Reed tries to help him with some calculations. He says no, and bang, right? So we have the explosion. Same thing happens. He leaves. It's not like the cartoon. The cartoon had a woman screaming. He goes find these monks. They teach him everything, and look, you don't have him fall in the snow, but he puts on a metal mask while it's still hot, right? And the same thing happens. He puts on the armor. He said, pain, what is pain? Pain, that is for lesser man. What can pain mean to Victor Von Doom, right? And he says, the mask isn't cool. Say no more, brother. He will tolerate no further delay. So it's and then I have another tidbit about the armor, right? And they show him as, the king of Latveria, right? So there you go. I guess what other thing I can do for you? So I showed you Burns. I showed you Kirby's original, and I have no other way to show you this last one. But so we're gonna quickly go through this, right? So you're gonna see this is more clip like the other story I showed you, right? So this demon. Playoff one we see, we have Stan Lee, Larry Lieber and Roy Thomas are the writers. Lieber is the artist with Frank Giacoa. And we see a fight with him and Matt. And we had this battle between Diablo and Dr. Doom, right? So they get into this battle where they test each other. And Diablo has a red herring. They have his girlfriend, right? And we go to the bed and he remembers this thing, halcyon time of his childhood, right? And we see him with the girl, and Burners pick that up that they were together. And then his father had to run, right? And at the same time, now you see, she wasn't in there beforehand. So see, anytime people are hard edged about these origins, we get to see how things are added to them that don't take away from it. She's there in the room with them and he finds the stuff and he's going after this stuff. And at the same time, he's got her and then she realizes that he's lost her, right? So then he's thinking about his former love and what it could have been. And then he takes off his mask and he realizes, looking at his face, that it's not going to work out, right? He realizes, why is he worried, right? He's doomed, right? So they go into final battle. And Valeria, that's who Reed and Sue's daughter is named after. That makes no sense, right? But that was supposed to connect that Reed was acting like Doom. So that's how they named their kid after Dooms. It's insane. But right, so they get into this battle and I'm just quickly going through it. Sorry, the double splash page that I messed up, right? And his girlfriend got a little hard to her, right? She's about Doom's plan was to free Valeria from this trance. And at the same time, he gets rid of him, sends him way off where he can't be around. But at the same time, his girlfriend is like, wait a second, how you were, seeing you gloat, like this isn't that. This isn't the Von Doom I knew, the Victor I knew. And he has nothing to say. He won't allow. So this is the torture that Ben was talking about. And we see him by himself, right? So ultimately, well, I guess this has changed from my original plan. This totally changed from what I was doing to this Doom torture thing. It started with the FF sucking and Ben Mendelsohn, and I have been away from it. So been kind of, guess I was wondering what my next thing was going to be for you guys, and at the same time, hoping that it doesn't sound as crazy as it sounds on my end. But I want to give you a last tidbit of Dr. Doom, which is, well, that's going to be a whole nother thing. That would be a whole nother thing. I can't do it. So we're going to do this just a bit, quick bit in This Land Is Mine, right? The FF are, we're going to get into a whole thing at some point. We'll do a whole video on how Doom lost and he gained back Latveria, right? So here he's telling you how messed up Latveria is. And this is under heavy debate, but I can show you how this played out, right? Ben wants to hit him, but at the same time he can't because there's an inhibitor raid. You'll see that in a second. But Reed and the Fantastic Four freed the Latveria from the dictatorship of Doom. Because Doom, of course, even though They seem to be happy. They always had to be happy. They had no choice, right? It's a great dynamic. I've talked about it before. So he also has this great inhibitor rate, and we see this boy. So we've kept it. There's a thread going on here, right? So there's a Kristoff thread. This is our first meeting, Kristoff. Burns inking is killer at this point. I think it definitely gets better when he's doing the Hulk, but this stuff was great, right? So this kid bumps into him, and he said, "Did someone struck Doom?" And then the torch like it's just a kid. Now you say, "Oh, someone touches him." It's also happened in Iron Man. So this whole thing of it was okay for there's so much Doom to do. I can't get into it. So this woman, oh look at her. She looks familiar, doesn't she? She comes over and she says, "Kristoff, no, not Kristoff. Do not kill my son. I beg you, no harm." And then she sees him, and this is like, "They said you were killed in battle." Then they lied. And then this gorgeous woman, just falls to her knees in front of them, and they can't believe it. And they're like, "Have we made a terrible mistake?" And you see, now, in seeing this, I thought this was just a loyal subject, but I think Byrne is hinting that this is still the woman. Since that this is still Valeria. I'm saying that we'll see him say something later, right? So she's going to describe what happened, right? But she's still a dark-haired beauty. Could either be, I would go with Jennifer Connelly, but now I guess you got Kat Dennings who could be it. But let's keep going, right? So said everyone was happy, but at the same time they had no choice but to be happy, right? Then Zorba comes in there, his brother to the late king, Rodolfo, and Reed helps and defeats Doom. And Rodolfo comes over, right? And then everything falls apart. They got crime, all this other stuff. I can't explain it more here, but it's set up before Byrne got there also. But Byrne kind of played it so you didn't have to read that other issue, right? And while they're talking, she gets shot and says, "She is dead. This woman is under my personal protection of Victor Von Doom, and she has been slain. Who's dared this?" So right, so this is Doom's robots killing someone. So this whole thread turned into a Kristoff Valeria thing, but hopefully it makes some sense, right? So even though it's not much FF, I did a video on the FF saying how great they are. I've done a bunch of videos. I've done a bunch of Byrne videos. If you don't like them and Marvel doesn't get it right, it's not the fault of the FF. The FF, if you don't like them, there's 100 issues by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby that were some of the greatest comics ever, right? They were the greatest comics ever. They created some of the most creative period in comic books, bar none. Bar none. You don't have Galactus, the Humans, the Black Panther. I guess you have Warlock recently, but you have all this in such a short span of time. The Negative Zone. There's other things in there. Ronan, the Accuser, the Kree, Sentry, the Microverse. There's so many different things. The romance in this, a triangle with with an actual rival, someone that could rival Reed the Leech. Okay, that's it. This is what I will do it. If you think about it, I described before that Reed is usually the problem. You don't get Reed right, you can't get the FF right. You can do a good Torch, you can do a good Sue, you can do a good Ben. You can do a funny Ben, or you can do a tortured Ben. But the key to the FF is Reed, because people look at it and say, well, he's the scientist, he's got to be a smart guy. But the scientist used in film and in literature used to be the man of action, the guy who could, recreate society, going to other worlds type of thing. That's what, like the old school, like Charlton Heston in what's the name in Planet of the Apes. He's the last that's the last bit from the old school type of scientists. And those leading mans, you take that face, you put like a Paul Newman, and you take him from, because he didn't really play those parts. But say Paul Newman would be an okay Reed, he's short. He became a cop, right? So this cop, leading man, that's the Reed type. But we kind of look at Reed and we look at him and we say, well, he's stuffy. He's not going to be interested in Sue. He's going to be interested in test tubes. And that's not Reed. Yes, he's going to be interested in that when it comes to saving the earth. But at the same time, Johnny the Hothead, you've seen him in the two movies with what's the name, Captain America playing him, and it worked. Sue, Jessica Alba was okay. It's not necessarily my Sue, but it's an okay Sue. But the dynamic was wrong, where we had this guy who's trying to. It's kind of how Chris Claremont wrote it. This guy who is a kind of a nerd who's trying to live up to being this man of action. So, but that's the hardest thing is that. But the thing is your Albert, something that can sink you, because if you turn him into Fozzie Bear, he's not going to work with the current audience. You get the tragedy first, then you can get to the humor, but you can't do the other way. So I found a way to wrap it around. I didn't diss Doom, even though Doom has not been successful in the movies either. So they're in the same boat. And I guess that's about it. I'm sorry, my lighting sucks. My lighting looks so much better in the other one. And my hair was darker. So I guess that's about it. I disagree. And I gotta figure, I'm gonna add more to this video so I can say something bad about Ben Mendelsohn. But anyway, that's about it. Spinner Rack out.